Thanks for having me as a speaker, and thanks to the organisers. I know there's been a big effort over the last couple of weeks to get this all happening, and it's a good turnout too. I recognise among the audience that we have quite a number of academics and a number of students, PhD students too, and lecturers. So I think it's quite relevant that you're here. Certainly, you drive the future of what happens in the world, and this particular application that I'm going to concept that I'm going to talk about, concept and application, is quite pivotal to the future that you are trying to build. So, and that's basically verifiable voting on blockchain. It's a bit of a holy grail of blockchain utility. So I'll get onto it. Imagine you have a transparent ballot boxes. These actually exist in real life. But imagine that you were, and try to visualize this, but try to visualize the entire population of Australia. To make that even easier, imagine the entire population of Australia is only 10 people. And so you imagine you had that 10 people population lined up, putting their vote into a transparent ballot box, as you can see on that screen. Then imagine, after all the votes are cast, and you can visibly see people putting in these votes, then imagine that you could walk up to that box and you have these big plastic gloves that you can reach in without tampering, but you could reach in and you could view the individual votes. You can tally them up yourself. You can verify that they've been done correctly. You can see which ones are the dummy votes. Imagine that, and imagine what it would do to democratic elections around the world. I know that it's always a bit of an issue. Every time there are elections, there's some claims of voter fraud. I know that recently in the US election, there were some claims that certain things happen this way or that way. It doesn't matter which side of politics that you sit on, because if you believe that the truth is on your side, then the truth can be verified by yourself independently on the blockchain if voting happens on the blockchain. It's quite sad that we haven't even started the discussion in Australia about doing something like this. This should have been addressed a long time ago, because the capability is there. The strength of blockchain voting is really in the transparency of the ledger. In fact, the strength of all blockchain is in the public nature of the accessibility of that information. When you hear about things like private blockchains, it's quite a dichotomy, because the whole concept and the power of blockchain and the fact that it is public and the fact that anyone can verify the records is where the strength of it all comes from. As soon as it is not transparent, or as soon as it is a closed system, I mean, I know, for example, that MasterCard have a private blockchain. Well, that's just a private database then. So really, if you're going to create a private blockchain, you're creating a private database that you've only added friction to your existing processes at the end of the day. Transparency is a key strength of blockchain. Inevitably, this transparency is what would lead to fairer elections. When you have all the data accessible, when data is transparent, then that inevitably leads to accountability. People behave differently when their actions are a little more transparent. How often do you deal with keyboard warriors online, and then you meet them and they're like, so it happens. It's the truth, and it's unfortunately human nature. If you've, I know Plato, there was some story of Plato regarding the ring of guides, was it? I don't quite remember. But it was along this narrative where if you believed you were anonymous, you will behave differently. Now, ironically, my product is called Anon Survey. I know that sounds like a bit of an irony, because, and the anonymity of that comes from the fact that we don't tie identity to your vote or to your survey response. That's important because if we could tie identity to responses, then that would kind of defeat the democratic nature of elections in itself. But the tallying and the verification of it should absolutely be transparent. So when all the records are on the blockchain, obviously everything electronic can be tallied up automatically. We no longer need to rely on counters, on people counting these votes manually and inevitably making mistakes. They're never 100%. So when you have votes that are close to 50-50, we often get recounts. And the recounts are remarkably sometimes different by a percent, which makes all the difference. So imagine eliminating that. All electronic forms of voting can eliminate that, but when it's publicly verifiable, everyone can reassess all that and validate that themselves. Finally, what happens on the blockchain stays on the blockchain. That means that in 50 years' time, someone can go through the records and see the election that happened in Australia 50 years ago. And someone could reassess, reevaluate, re-verify. And I want to say that I know I'm talking about federal elections here, but it's applicable to all surveys. And I know in academia that when you produce a lot of lab reports, theses, whatever it might be, you publish papers, it often involves surveys. And these surveys can be captured immutably in the same way so that someone in future can re-evaluate all the work that you've done, re-verify it, and maybe find something new. And then obviously cite your work and republish and do a lot more with it. At the moment, a lot of those records, well, they reference them in papers, but the physical records are not there in most cases. So I want to introduce that capability that I've been talking about, verifiable voting. It exists, and it's ready, and it can be used. It's called Anon Survey, and this is the application. That's a screenshot of the application. You can register on there, and you can create a new survey quite easily. If you've used Monkey Survey, this is even easier. Standard drag and drop functionality. Add the content that you want, the words, the headlines, the paragraphs, the drop-down boxes, the radio buttons, whatever it is. You can customize and create your own survey with as many questions as you want, as long as it needs to be. You have the option below. So down there, to publish the responses to the blockchain. You don't have to do that. Some may choose not to for whatever reason, and you can encrypt the responses. Encrypting responses is important if you don't want it to be publicly available, but you want it to be available to people that you choose. So that's an important aspect of that. Certain people, certain companies will, for example, imagine a shareholder vote. A company may not want that to be publicly accessible data because competitors can make use of that data, but internally, they will be able to independently verify internally with all that. So it was mentioned before, but someone mentioned there was a question about how private something can be made, and it can be made as private as you want it to be made. It can be published, but it can be encrypted. So that's another screenshot. That's a screenshot of a single question survey. In this particular case, it's a merger deal. Should the company agree to the merger deal? Yes, no, or undecided. And in red, there's a note there to say that your form response will be captured publicly on the blockchain, and it's important that people know that when they submit anything that is going to be plastered to the entire world. So the person receiving this will basically just receive this form, and all they have to do is hit submit. They don't need a Bitcoin wallet, they don't need blockchain knowledge, they don't need any of that. And that's the idea behind Anon survey. It needs to be as simple as possible, and all the mechanics of the blockchain world happen behind the scenes. No one needs any tokens, no one needs any, I mean, the token aspect happens all in the background. No one needs any special knowledge. They don't even need to know they're using blockchain. They get this, they choose their option, and they hit submit. Even the person creating the survey doesn't need any Bitcoin knowledge or any blockchain or any wallet, because purchasing, the payment side all happens via credit card and PayPal. So you don't actually need to have anything to do with blockchain. And that was the idea, to be as easy as possible, because when you want to do a federal election one day, and I hope it gets to that point one day, when you want to do that, you've got, an entire population of people who are some computer literate, some very computer illiterate, and it needs to be accessible to everyone. The last thing you want to do is show people how to, decipher transactional information on the blockchain. It's just not going to happen if you want the world using a product. Of course, just like Monkey Survey and all the rest of them, stats are collated automatically, but you as an independent person can also go on there and do your own account as well. It's all on the blockchain. So the fundamental advantages of all this is that no wallets are needed. There are no apps needed other than the actual application to design the survey itself and so on. No Bitcoin knowledge, and therefore no confusion on anyone. I was going to take questions, but I can talk a little bit more about it because I don't want to. I just realised I'm a little bit early, so I might actually end there. And but if there are any questions, I will gladly take questions after the fact. Is there anything? Yeah. All right. But I hope that kind of gives you a bit of a impression as to the product. But also, I just want to touch on the other product that was mentioned, Amleh. And I know that's been in the works for a very, very long time. It was built by Eli and Co. They did a really good job at building the platform. It is, so just so that, in case you don't know, Amleh is a separate product which was a gold-backed token. There was a lot of discussion about it early on. It is developed, and we are in talks with investors at the moment who are looking at basically tokenizing gold and basically bringing the power of Bitcoin to assets like gold. Imagine being able to transmit gold instantly across the world and having all of the details of that audited and verifiable on the blockchain. So that's the strength of that. And they've worked to make it legally compliant. So it's a bit of a departure from the ICO world, and rightfully so. It needs to be that. That's still in the works, and business often moves slower than you originally anticipate. So that's the reason why it's been a bit quiet on that front. But I can assure you it's still being built, it's still on the cards, and it's still we're still getting investor interest from it. So hopefully we can secure a deal in the very near future on that one. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to Q&A shortly.